Am I on mute? I think I'm unmuted. I'll say that again. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this broadcast. As part of this year's Tipperary Pride celebrations, a number of organisations have come together to promote visibility of the LGBTQ community in Tipperary. The North Tipperary Development Company, supported by the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Programme, have partnered with GOSHH, GCN and Sporting Pride to host this event, which focuses specifically on Gaelic games. Without a doubt, Gaelic games are very much the sport of choice for many people in the Premier County, and promoting inclusivity and visibility in Tip is the aim of this event. So I have two fantastic people joining me this evening. Firstly, we have Maria Curley, who is an exceptional player for Tipperary Ladies and Templemore. She's an All-Ireland champion at both underage and adult level. And Luke Nolan, who I'm sure is also an excellent player, came up with the idea this time last year of creating an all-inclusive LGBTQ plus GAA club. So how are you both doing?
Good, thanks, Anna.
Good. Luke, how are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. So, yeah, I suppose a quick bit of info from the two of you. How are you doing? Where are you in the country? How is life at the moment?
Well, I'm in Templemore, County Tipperary, and I'm doing really well, apart from the rain beating off the window. But other than that, doing really, really well, and delighted to be joined by you both on this.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And Luke,
then I'm in,
you, and how is life?
I am in Sandyford, or Sandymount even, my God. Sandymount in Dublin. And the weather has been a little bit wild and wonderful here today as well, but it seems to have cleared up now, and I am doing really, really well, thank you.
Good, good. Yeah, the weather, it's funny, as my mother said to me recently, this was a crap summer. We had 10 days of blistering heat and the rest was just rubbish. So hopefully things will turn around in the next few days, or the next, whatever, the remainder of August. Just for everyone who has joined us, thanks a million for that. We have the option of you asking questions. So you can write them out and they will appear on the side of my screen for Maria and Luke, and I'll read them out at the end. But any question at all that you have for either of them, just jot it down and we'll get to it. So this is about increasing visibility in sport, and we always like to ask people at the beginning of these chats their coming out stories. So Maria, how was coming out for you, and how is it telling friends, family and your sporting colleagues?
Yeah, I suppose originally when I was asked to do this webinar, I kind of was thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm the right person for that. And I don't know if I actually have, you know, a good enough story. But then coming home and I was talking to my partner, and I probably realized that that might actually be a story in itself. But I had quite a positive experience really from the get-go of it. But I suppose from the start, I kept things quite casual, and I guess the whole fake it till you make it thing was big in my life, in that I always told myself I'm grand, you know, I don't care, I'm grand, you know, that kind of stuff. But I guess saying the words always is a struggle at the end of the day, you know, it's never easy to utter it. But I guess it was when I was in college in UL, I was with a really great bunch of people in terms of my sporting team. And, you know, I had friends from the LGBTQ community and outside of it as well. And I think I really started to explore myself and kind of explore my options and stuff. But I guess I lived with a bunch of, quite funny actually, really girly girls in college, and they were the best. They were great. But I think I was an amusement to them really, because I think they thought I was a bit mad going from this to that and back. I think it was just me exploring and bringing them along with me on my journey, you know, and they were great, and they just found me entertaining, I think, at the end of it. But I suppose then I told my sister, and my sister, really open, honest person. You could walk down the stairs and she'd say, you look like crap today, you know, that type of person. But she's really, really great, and it was really easy to tell her. She has, you know, plenty of gay friends and that, so it wasn't hard for me. And then I suppose when I told my mom, I was still a bit like, oh God, and I was kind of like, I need to talk to you, and she was kind of going, oh God, thinking, you know, what's wrong, or you know, is there something mad wrong or anything like that. But I just kind of told her that I was seeing someone, because I was seeing somebody at the time, and she kind of was like, oh, that's great, you know, great news. And I said, and it's actually a woman. And she kind of was like, yeah, I had a feeling. And that was kind of it for me, you know. She told my now 86-year-old granny and my dad and all that, so it was kind of really easy. And in fairness, we've quite an open family. We're almost like the Brady Bunch in that we've people all over the shop. But you know, for me, it was quite easy, and they're all really, really supportive. And once they supported me, then after that, I'm quite a chilled person in that I was happy with that, and that was kind of it, you know.
That's great. And Luke, how is it for you?
My coming out story was quite similar in a lot of ways, and then a little bit different in others. I was one of those children that was always very kind of artsy, theatrical, a little bit dramatic. Was always quite into my sports growing up initially. And then I kind of figured out that something was up probably when I was about 15 or 16 years old. And I very much kind of started to come into myself then, and I started kind of going into myself. I started pushing away from kind of things that it was like, but I was just trying to figure myself out. I'm from a rural background myself, so I found that I didn't think that there was people like me around. I didn't know anything like that. Being gay was not a concept in my mind at the time. And then I realized myself that I was kind of like this, and I was like, okay, I think I'm gay. This is great. I'm going to go to Dublin. I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to try and figure this out for myself and see what the crack is, and we'll go from there. So I moved to Dublin.
Yeah.
And figured that out. And then myself, I came out to, I think it was my sister, my friends in college and stuff. I kind of started out in college out in the open. And then from there, I kind of came out to my family. So I remember my sister, for example, the two of us were sitting at home, both of us were home. And it was just two of us sitting there and we were having a conversation. I just looked over at her and went, you know, I'm gay, yeah? And she was like, yeah. And then it both came from there. And since then, she's also an out member of the community as well. So it's become a very kind of funny situation there. My parents was a little more of a strange situation. My dad in particular, a very, very lovely man, loved him to bits. Took him a little bit longer to get the idea of it.
Yeah.
It took him quite a long time. Couple of years, in fact, to really get behind the idea. Like, always was unconditionally loving and supportive. Just was something that he didn't quite understand. Yeah. But now we're in a much better position, and he loves me incredibly, and I'm very, very fortunate to have that. So yeah, overall, it was a little bit of a turbulent coming out process, but very glad I did it, and very glad we're here.
Yeah, and look, that's a common story with many people, that it perhaps takes a parent or two a little while to get their heads around it. So Maria, in relation to you coming out then and your sporting world, how did that fit together? Because I think, Luke, we'll come to you in a minute. There's a slightly different story to Maria's, but it seems like it for you and the GAA you're playing, it worked together nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it was kind of in college really where I really came out, and I was playing with the UL football team at the time, who were actually amazing. And, I had gay friends on the team as well. So that made it a little bit easier for me. But in terms of the team environment itself, it's not that I really came out to any of them as such. They just kind of assumed, or saw me in that the way I was, and that it's not, I didn't sit any of them down and say, look, I'm gay, but it just kind of happened. But with that team, they were a really good bunch of girls, and no matter what you did or what you looked like or who you brought home, you were going to be slagged anyway, in that if you had a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend, or you dyed your hair a funny color or curled it, even if it's always straight, you walked in the dressing room and you got a slating and a slagging for everything. But I love that, because it just meant that nobody was different, nobody was individualized, everyone was getting slagged. And we kind of had a saying in the dressing room, leave your feelings at the door, you know, because there was no sugarcoating it, whether you were gay, straight, no matter what you were getting a slagging for something that you'd done that day or that week. So for me, that fitted in really nicely. But again, you're in a
didn't feel you were the first, Maria. You didn't feel you were the only one who was a lesbian. Were you aware of other people either in your club or on other teams? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Within the UL team, there was a couple of girls as well. So that was nice. And there was a couple of older girls, because I suppose when I started, I was in first year, obviously. So the older girls were really nice, and they almost kind of took me underneath their wing for a word. But they were really, really good and really supportive. And if you ever had any issues, you know, you could always go to them and that. But no, I suppose Tipperary was a little bit different then, in that there's probably less, you know, you're in Limerick, you're in a city, there's bound to be, you know. But we went back to Tipperary, and the same thing, I never sat any of them down really, apart from maybe one of my good friends when I was kind of finding myself. But I did sit one of them down and tell her, and she'd be from quite a rural background in a rural town, and she kind of was surprised at the time, but really when you look at it, it wasn't that surprising. But so other than her, which she took it really well, and you know, we're best friends to this day and that. But in Tipperary now, we have a couple of girls who are lesbians, and so it's quite out in the open, and we've girls of all ages as well, which is really, really nice, because we've girls coming in at 16, 17, 18, and then they're seeing the older girls, and it just makes everything quite visible and inclusive for if anyone is struggling with it, or you know, if anyone is on that wavelength. So
yeah, that is brilliant. Luke, I think you had a slightly different experience in relation to coming out and your relationship with sport.
Yes, definitely. I found that coming out when it came to the course of me realizing who I was, sport was definitely something I pushed away. I think it's seen as this very kind of, especially with men, this is very much this kind of macho kind of persona associated with the GAA. And typically there will be a stereotype that gay men may not exactly fit into that. There was also concerns that I'd be ostracized by the team. So what I did myself was I completely pushed away sport for a number of years. And it was only after I graduated college that the idea for Na Gaeil Aeracha came around. And then we've come around from a point of me completely pushing away sport in direct relation to my coming out. To long-term having it be a quintessential part of my sporting experience, which is some kind of U-turn to see.
Yeah. So I'd love now to hear about the club that you set up and how it all came about.
Of course. My favorite spiel. So Na Gaeil Aeracha, we are Ireland's first LGBTQI plus inclusive GAA club. We started our first committee meeting. I checked the date today just for this, was the 14th of September last year was our first ever committee meeting. This ultimately started from a thread on Twitter, which was a couple of lads that I know. We were just chatting away saying, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a similar thing to what the Dublin Devils and LGBTQ plus soccer team have, or the Emerald Warriors? And wouldn't it be amazing if we had this for GAA? Why don't we look into this? What could happen? So I sent a text to a couple of guys who were in that group and was like, hey, let's seriously look into this, see what we can do. And then I suppose that kind of just got the ball rolling from there. So now, a year on, we're officially registered GAA club. Our women are actually playing a match this evening. This kick off in about 15 minutes, both league and championship. So a bit of a big one. Our men's team we're working on doing social kickabouts to them as well. So it's something that is properly starting to get the ball rolling up. There's still so much work to do, but we're all incredibly proud of where it's gotten to so far, and we can't wait to see where it goes from there as well.
It's fantastic. And how was it approaching the GAA? Were you nervous? Did you think they would embrace this idea? What was going on as you approached the GAA? What were your thoughts?
So I suppose there's two sides to this. There was our initial concerns and then what actually happened. So we originally, when we thought we were going to do this, we were like, oh gosh, this is going to end terribly. We're going to be ignored completely at best, and at worst, we were going to get something strongly worded back saying, never broach this again. When it came to it, actually, one of the first people that got in contact with us at all when we decided to set this up was Geraldine McTavish, who, for those who don't know, is the Diversity and Inclusions Officer in the GAA. So it's a relatively new role, but what she did was she got us in contact with the right people. So, for example, she got us in contact with Supporting Pride. She was able to give us advice and tips on how the actual paperwork worked with setting up, because setting up a GAA club is a lot of paperwork. I cannot stress it enough. It is a bureaucratic nightmare. So she helped out a ton of that. So GAA turned out to be an incredibly helpful group. GAA as well, the LGFA as well in particular, were an incredibly helpful organisation in getting us registered and sorted. They were going through system upgrades at the time, and they still managed to go out of their way to help us get set up, which was amazing to see. So we had a really, really positive overall help from the GAA as an organisation.
That's really amazing. And I think it's so encouraging, because I would say there would be many people like yourself, Luke, who, because of being fearful, stepped away from sports because of their sexuality, and didn't feel confident the way Maria did, I suppose, the way some other people do in being open, and continuing on their sporting experience. And I'll come back to you, Luke, about how people can join. But Maria, I suppose for you, the broader picture of sport. How has sport supported you over the years, and how important is it to you for not only physically but your mental health as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things that I've gotten from sports is most of my best friends are friends from sport. And I think when you play competitive sport or even non-competitive, you end up with a group more like a family than friends, because you spend so much time together. It's almost a different kind of friendship. It's like a special bond. You become more like sisters, and you'd be killing each other half the time. But it's really, really nice. And I think the people I've met have been my main support, really, as in, I can't even describe what they've done for me, both on the three main teams that I play for, which would have been in UL, my club Templemore, and Tipperary. I've made friends for life, and that has been my main support. In terms of physically, I can't go a week without exercise, or I'm crawling the walls. So I enjoy the competitive side of it, and I suppose being in that competitive environment can be like advantageous and can have its disadvantages too, in that when you're a competitive type of person, you love to win, and anything but a win just isn't good enough. And I like to describe myself as a chilled out type of person, but I'm sure my Tipperary teammates won't agree with that. In terms of, it's a different story on the field. And I guess, when you're not having a good year, and when you play at inter-county level, unless you're, one of the top teams, Cork or Dublin, there seems to be a lot more downs than ups, because you're just not getting to where you want to be year after year. Yeah. But you have to look at it and think, are there more ups than downs? And the friends, the memories, everything just, it trumps, the kind of the bad days when you're giving out because you're not playing good enough, and different things like that. So for me, it's the friends was the most important thing for me.
Yeah. And Luke, are you feeling that now that you're now in a sporting environment, and the benefits that you can get from not only the exercise, but the support and being with a gang of like-minded people, but also the addition now of being openly out? There isn't that secret side to you.
Exactly. I think, there's a very common kind of trope among gay people that we get to choose the families and communities that we surround ourselves in, and that they're the functional and supportive groups that we make. And sports teams are always that, regardless of your sexual identity or gender orientation, or sexual orientation or gender identity, apologies. But so what we found as well is that, especially with our women's team and our men's teams as well, that everyone's able to come together in a way that only sport can do, really, where you are going out and it could be lashing rain and everyone's destroyed, and you just get back in and you might have lost, you might have been absolutely hopped off, and You get in there, but you're all in it together, and you've all done it for this one thing together.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing. I suppose, and another side of it as well is that so many things in so many social groupings in relation to the queer community are also alcohol based, which is a whole other topic.
That's so true.
The limits of this. So it's quite nice to have something as well that's just where that's not an element to it at all, where regardless of anything that you can just come, you can get involved, you can come and join into. So I think that's a big thing there as well in the community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm just thinking myself, I played basketball for a few years and then I stopped. And then I came back to it in my kind of, was it late 30s? And then I stopped again. But I was the second time round as a Masters player. The fact that I could say my partner or my girlfriend or this is going on in my life, you cannot underestimate the freedom that brings to you as a sports person, because, you know, the sporting world for decades has been primarily a heterosexual world, you know, and when you're in sport, you can't help but bring what's going on in your life into the sporting world. So just to be able to say my girlfriend or my boyfriend or this is what's going on, I think it's invaluable, really. And this is a question now, I suppose, for both of you. It's a big question and don't feel you have to answer it in a big way. But looking at the Olympics, you know, recently, and just seeing the amount of LGBTQ athletes and the publicity that they're getting is, I think, so moving. I just think it's incredible, even since we had the last Olympic Games. And I suppose the question is, why is it important to have LGBTI plus visibility? Why do you both think it's important to see it, to see that somebody is out and proud?
I'll start, Luke. Just in terms of the numbers, to my knowledge, I think it's 3 times the amount we've had before, which is amazing to see. And in terms of why visibility is important, I think the most important thing about it is to normalize it. And the fact that those athletes are out there and putting themselves out there, making it normal for everyone else. The Olympics is a huge part of our lives. And I know I love to sit down and watch it, and I'm sure there are many others. And there are, you know, children around and teenagers around watching that. Yeah. And if any of those are struggling with themselves, you know, they can see exactly what's going on and see these athletes normalizing it, which is what I think is so important. And, you know, it's not being broadcast as anything out of the norm now. These athletes are there, they're competing to the best of their abilities, and they're amazing. So I just think that's, seeing it is the most important part for me anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree completely. I think representation and seeing it there. I know for myself, funnily enough, in relation to the Olympics, an athlete that I took a lot of inspiration from when it was coming to the coming out process was Tom Daly. Now, my extended knowledge of diving is nothing more than shouting at the TV screen once every 4 years about how someone's double half pipe was off. But it's actively seeing those people there. And I know from my own coming out experience that if there were more queer people visible to me at the time, that I probably would have found it easier to come into myself, and I probably would have stuck with sport as well. So seeing those athletes and knowing that they're there and that you can be queer and an athlete, or you can be queer and do this, that, or whatever, is the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. Do you think sporting organizations can do more? Of course they can do more, but have you, either of you, any thoughts on that, or have you both felt you have received enough support from the organizations that you're connected with?
I think for a while it was kind of almost like the white elephant in the room, personally. But I know in the last number of years, the GAA have now started marching in the Pride March in Dublin, which is great to see, really, really good to see. And the Camogie Association actually have kind of teamed up with Shout Out, and I know they're delivering educational webinars for their children's officers, which I think is really important because, you know, I think a lot of people, especially now the way things have gone, are almost afraid to broach the subject and talk about these things in case they say something wrong. And they might not mean to be homophobic, transphobic, whatever, but they just don't know the correct terminology or how to deal with these things.
Yeah.
And so I think the educational side of things for coaches, for development officers, children's officers, these people are dealing with our kids and our teenagers at grassroots level. They're the first people that they're dealing with, so they need to be able and in the know of how to spot if somebody is struggling, or you know, just be educated on the topic. So I thought that the Camogie Association took a huge step with that. And it'll be great to see the LGFA and the GAA do something similar, I think personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like Maria said there, like, education is the important thing. I think that an important part of that as well is getting queer people involved in these organizations and getting them up to these levels. And ultimately, because I know even ourselves, when it's come to the GAA and stuff, they've learned some stuff from Na Gaeil Aeracha in relation to how queer sports teams work. In relation, it's not a thing in the GAA where it is in other kind of with other sports. So I think there's learning to be done. I think it's showing and opening a willingness to learn, and having these companies come, or having these organizations come and go, right, we want to make this better. We want to make this a more inclusive place. And it's great to see that steps are definitely being taken, for example, with the GAA and having a diversity and inclusions officer. 10 years ago, that's not something that would have even been thought of.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see these changes being made. We've also got to realize that these are only baby steps, and there is so much further to go as well in relation to these. Yeah,
absolutely. There's still a lot more work to be done. And the fact that your club is only a baby club, it's only a year old, you know, it's just kind of highlights that as well. What would you both say needs to be done to help community members in rural areas and smaller towns come out? You know, I suppose I was in Dublin a long time ago when I came out, but I think, you know, people who live in cities, it's easier to connect with organizations. I think it's really tough in rural Ireland. What do you both think could be done?
I think that it is a tough one, and you know, you kind of look and say, well, what are people doing, or what could we do? But you're right, the organizations tend to be more in the cities, there's more population, and like that, similar probably to both yourselves, if you were deciding you were going on a night out, you're heading to Dublin or Cork, and that's kind of what you're doing. But when you're in somewhere, I'm not going to say Templemore is rural because we're not a tiny little village or anything, but when you're kind of in a place like that, I think it really needs to come from visibility as well. Like if you think of your schools and think about, you know, Science Week or whatever else they're doing in schools these days. There's no reason why in primary school there can't be a Pride Day where everyone comes in and wears their Pride colours. And I know it is happening in some schools. I have heard of that, but probably not around here just yet. And I think that's quite a thing they could do in schools, educate the kids, you know, when they're younger, primary school, secondary school, like in terms of visibility. I have a load of friends that are teachers and they'll kill me for saying this, but I know keeping your private life private when you're a teacher is so important. But imagine how cool it would have been when you were in school to have, you know, a member of the LGBTQ community as your teacher. Then you would have been saying, okay, you know, so they have to spill the beans on everything, but you know, just to have the visibility around. And I think, you know, events like this is really important as well. It's highlighting that it is out there, but that would be a big one for me, just, you know, visibility in that.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an amazing video that was put up online, a primary school from Glasnevin. Did you see it?
Glasnevin.
Yeah. It was
one of my very good friends is the teacher that helped to organise that.
It was
He actually plays on our
fantastic.
men's football team as well.
I'll tell you, it was absolutely brilliant. It was so joyful and very moving as well. And you just think, God, for those kids to have that celebration that day, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's mad to think. I'm not incredibly long out of school. I'm not that long in the tooth. I would have been in primary school in the early to mid 2000s, and that was not something that would have even been thought about.
Yeah.
Not have even been thought about 10 years. It wouldn't have been thought about when I was in secondary school.
Yeah.
So it really is amazing to see that there is kind of, even within the education system, that we are seeing this change societally in Ireland to moving towards somewhere that is more tolerant.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to someone who is living in a rural location or a small town and struggling with their sexuality?
I think, okay, so for myself, as someone who is formerly someone who lived in a rural area and was struggling with their sexuality, resources and finding those resources. I think I was telling you this before. I did not know what belong to was until I was in college. I had no idea that there was these LGBT resources out there, and it wasn't because they weren't. It wasn't because they weren't like advertising. They were there. They were present. I don't think I had the language, and I didn't have. I didn't have. I won't say the cop on because obviously something I knew, but I think finding those resources and reaching out, trying to figure that out is probably the best advice that I have. You will figure yourself out eventually, but you just need to know that there are the resources and supports in place for you to do that and find that journey. It's just about finding them. So that would be my advice. And there's so many different ways that can be done. That can be done online. That can be done through local groups if you know they're there. There's so many different ways to do it. Yeah.
Maria, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo Luke on that one, that's so important. And like we were saying, Luke, I was the same with that. You know, we didn't know these things existed. And that's why events like these are so important, because you're highlighting everything that does exist, which is really, really nice. And I guess, Luke, you and I just weren't tuning into the right places a few years ago. But I also think confiding in a friend is really important. You know, pick somebody you trust. And you know that you're happy to talk to someone, because bottling it up is not going to solve anything for you. And like Luke said, you will figure it out eventually. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to come on this today is that to show it doesn't have to be a negative experience. It can be a positive experience, and you know you can find positivity in it. So don't underestimate how supportive your friends and family can be as well. That would be just what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Say that again.
I'm going to say, just to throw on top of that, you can either have a perfectly smooth transition to that period, or it can be a little bit bumpy and things might not go exactly the way you planned. But there has never been a minute that since I've gone through that entire process, that I haven't or I have had any regrets about it. Yeah. So I think that's just important to note as well. Like, everyone's journeys are different in that.
Yes.
But I think ultimately anyone you ask, or very, very few, like most people would say that it was the best thing they ever did.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back on a point you made, I think it's also good to know you might need to be patient with some people and give them time, because whether it's a parent or a sibling, they might have had a plan in their head of how your life was going to be and had all of that mapped out, and you're now presenting a different life from what they maybe had in their heads. So I think, you know, patience with other people is good. And also you'll find new incredible people to add to your life. You know, if everyone isn't 100% supportive, you will find for that one person, you will find another 50 people who will be supportive with you. So yeah, it's an interesting time when you're coming out, but just be patient, and you know it will work out. It absolutely will. We are coming to the end of our chat, and if there are any questions, I don't think there are actually. People are just loving you two talk. I have another couple of questions for you both, but if anyone has a question, jot it down. So for the two of you, future plans, the future. Luke, what are the plans for the club, and who can get in touch and who is welcome?
So the plans for the club, so many. We have everything. We have our women's team are competitive for this season, so the plan is to keep that going until the season ends. Once that happens, we'll be looking for new members. Around the same time, our men's teams as well will be fully registered and competitive. That won't be this season, unfortunately, but it's coming. However, we are continuously organising social kickabouts, and we have a few fundraisers and things coming up. So there's a lot happening. People want to find out about us or how to get involved or anything along those lines. There's a few different ways you can do it. So on our Twitter and Instagram are both Na Gaeil Aeracha. So that's NAGAEIL AERCHA. Na Gaeil Aeracha. If you just search something with that basic letter combo, something will come up.
Yes, because I did that and I had a bit of a misspelling, but it comes up.
It does, exactly. And then our email address, if you want to get involved in regards to anything, that can be getting involved with a committee, get interested in playing, interested in, I don't know, if you want to help sponsor a team, if you want to coach, anything that you can think of. The best way to reach us, our email address is dublinlgbtqgaa@gmail.com. And someone will get back to you there with everything, but that's the easiest and best way to reach out to us.
Brilliant. That is fantastic. And Maria, your sporting career, what's this year like, and what are the plans for the future?
Plans for the future. Well, obviously we'd love to win a senior All-Ireland with Tip Ladies. We're a bit away from that yet, but never say never. Once Tipperary finishes now in the next couple of weeks, I'll then return to my club in Templemore, and we'll be kicking off championship probably the end of August, start of September. So that'll be enjoyable, and hopefully we can get a few wins with that too. Starting a new job on Monday in the public sector. So with the HSE, I'm a physiotherapist. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully that'll go well, but that's about it now.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Well, listen, thank you both for joining us. There's a little note here from Evelyn on the comments saying, would you mind to mention Pride Walk on the 15th at 11 a.m. out at Hayes Hotel, Thurles. And also Tipperary Pride is on the 20th and the 21st of August. Our Pride Parade on the 21st of August goes through Thurles town. So I'd like to thank both of you, Maria and Luke, for joining me. That was really, really enjoyable. And thanks everyone for joining us live this evening. And to everyone who's watching this back online. This event was brought to you by the North Tip Development Company, GOSHH, GCN and Sporting Pride. Please also check out the Tipperary Pride Facebook. That's where all the details are going to be for Tipperary Pride, and I believe it's going to be a really exciting weekend. And also they have other things planned throughout the month of August. So I just need to check if there's any other things that I need to say. No, that is it. So we're going to close now with a quick 1-minute video that outlines some of the supports that are available to the LGBTQ community in Tipperary. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you do need support in any capacity. Thanks a million. Good night.
Hi there, I'm just going to share some information with you on supports available to LGBTI plus people living in Tipperary. And just a quick word of thanks as well to the North Tip Development Company, the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Programme, and Tipperary County Council for getting behind this event. So if you are living in Tipperary, one of the first point of contacts could be GOSHH, which stands for Gender, Orientation, Sexual Health and HIV. GOSHH cover North Tipperary, Limerick and Clare. So you can phone them on their confidential helpline on 061 316661, or you can email info@goshh.ie for more information. If you're based in South Tipperary, you can contact Jared Sweetman on 085 854 1514, or you can email Jared on jared@clonmelcrc.ie. As you know, August is a month of Tipperary Pride this year. So if you want to find out more about what's happening, you can phone them on 086 264 2892. You can also find them on Facebook by searching for @Tipperary LGBTQ Pride, or you can email them at pridetipperary@gmail.com. And finally, if you are in North Tipperary, there is the North Tipperary Development Company. Joanne is their community support worker, and Joanne can be reached on 087 369 7922, or you can email her at jmccarthy@ntdc.ie. So stay safe and enjoy the rest of the Tipperary Pride celebrations.